Joe, we've covered some masterpieces on this program.
I mean, if this is you bringing it up that it made you watch Godzilla '97 again, I am still sorry about that. Even though I think that movie at least tried. Unlike what we're talking about tonight, I just see a serious lack of effort from multiple directions.
I mean, it kind of is what it is, but ultimately we've covered The Room a few years ago. Yes, the aforementioned Godzilla '97, and considering it is technically spooky season, for those of you who listen to us week over week, we are within October with a very limited amount of episodes we're releasing this season. It felt right to definitely drift towards spooky content yet again, but not the kind that's probably likely to actually scare anyone.
It's scary for a few reasons. One, in that it does involve zombies. So there are monsters involved, but it's also scary at just how bad it is, because it's awful. This is far from a good movie, and not even like how sometimes it's just so laughably bad you can at least enjoy yourself. You hit a point in this movie where you just realize that you're still watching it, and you're like, oh. It's still going. I thought this movie was only 86 minutes long.
This is so the movie that we watched that I, for some reason, decided to pick out this year was The House of the Dead, which honestly, there are times watching this film where even I lost track of what I was doing and just realized, oh wow, I'm actually watching this to talk about it, and it's like, I need to rewind it a little bit. I missed some very important context, only to realize I did not.
I was going to say, what very important context could you possibly have missed in this movie? And as an actual, as a heads up, some behind-the-scenes stuff here, there was a time earlier this season where Mark had asked me, Joe, have we ever purposefully watched a bad movie for the podcast? In which I said, no, going into every single thing we have watched, played, or reviewed in this program, at least one of us has enjoyed it at some point in time in our lives. And then there was House of the Dead.
Oh yeah, no one was enjoying this. I mean, it's one of those movies where we watched it simply so that we could consume alcohol.
Yes,
and that made it much easier to get by. But ultimately, Joe, 2003, a banner year for the action horror genre, and a director by the name of Uwe Boll.
Oh yes, a man called Uwe, and has nothing to do with the book, which is much better than this movie. Because yes, during this time, like you said, this is definitely the twilight of video games being made into movies, and twilight as in it's very murky and not great, because there are a lot of things around this time. I think Blood Rain is made about this time. I think also by Uwe Boll. Alone in the Dark was made around this time, starring one Christian Slater. Also
by Uwe Boll.
So I guess maybe this isn't like the advent or the twilight of the video game horror series into a movie, so much as people seem to keep throwing Uwe Boll money and just say, have you played this game? No? Have you heard of it? Okay, here's roughly what it's about. Please go make us a movie.
This was otherwise known as a tax loophole that Uwe Boll decided to take full advantage of from the German government. Basically, whatever he spent on these movies, the German government would pay him back 50% of that investment. Otherwise known as a tax shelter. So this is how he was making movies for a while, up until about 2006. So if you saw any of these majestic gems that he just happened to get out there during this window, courtesy of the German government. Thank you so much.
It's like, I don't know, like, is this like the producers where they found out they could make more money with a flop than a hit, and the German government's like, we can make a tax loophole out of this? As long as you make movies, we'll be able to give you some money out of it. Like, what happened? How? How does this work?
It's funny, Joe, how someone managed to find a way to rip off the government by making movies. I just never would have seen that one, but ultimately what we have, Joe, is a less than faithful adaptation of a very popular on-rail shooter that we used to see in almost every arcade across the United States for a very long time. Even some arcades still have it now, which this movie is technically a prequel to the 1996 game, Joe.
Ugh, and it's just, if anything ruins the fun memories of that arcade game, it's probably this movie. Because, I mean, I am sure that like a good chunk of our audience here, of the Gen Xers and the Millennials, we've played this arcade game. I definitely know this was, I'm pretty sure at one point at Cozy's Pizza in my tiny hometown of Mauston. It's been in malls that I've been in. It's entertaining enough. I mean, it's pretty great. It's zombies, you got gargoyles, axes are flying at you here and there. You can shoot the axes out of the air as well as the gargoyles and any other creature that comes your way. And it is something where it's I want to say a very playable and very beatable arcade. Like, I do remember beating this game in some capacity, where I remember getting all the way to the end and enjoying the video game, which is good because the video game, actual shots of the video game, do make it into this movie. If you do recall the graphics of this video game, you'll recall that that's not the draw to playing the video game necessarily, and why they show up in a movie pretty much whenever the opportunity does and does not present itself. You'll wonder why these parts were used in there.
Back when all character models were made of like cubes, and it basically looked like Minecraft, but just a zombie shooter. I mean, for those of you that haven't played it, haven't watched this film, trust me, if you've watched this film, you would have roughly about 3 to 4 dozen reminders of what that gameplay looks like, because it's spliced in randomly throughout the entire thing. And
yeah. It just, in no sense. Like, you would think it'd be at least a transition, but oftentimes it's not even transitioning much. It's literally like you can see the characters walking from one side of, like, I'd say a location, because I'm not going to say set. I think a lot of this probably was filmed outside. You're just literally walking from like one end of a house to another without really anything changing. It's just, no, here's a bit of the video game because it's based on a video game, kinda. It's painful to watch, as is with most aspects of this movie, because as you can imagine, as a German tax loophole exploit movie is made, done on a budget, and a lot of that budget got poured into, I believe, hiring one person. As there's only one, there are 2 recognizable people in this movie, and one at the time was not an established actress. So Erica Durance does her absolute best with this movie and does a very good job for the, I would say, maybe 5 minutes that she's in towards the start of the movie. Also, I'm pretty sure she does not look fondly back upon this movie, as she, one, it's not a very good movie. And unfortunately, like with most actresses starting their career who start with a horror movie, she does take her top off pretty quick in the movie. So, you know,
this
if
is
that's
the whole
what you're
reason why
looking
Joe
for.
was in. This was why Joe wanted to watch this movie.
Literally why you sold me on it.
As soon as I mentioned it, I said, Joe, Erica Durance, literally your Lois Lane, she removes her clothing.
She does, and this is a woman who I've almost physically bumped into twice in the span of like an hour and a half, and was thoroughly embarrassed in that hour and a half period, and that I almost like ran into her. But yeah, she was fantastic in Smallville. To this day, still my favorite Lois Lane. Sorry for all those who love Margot Kidder. And why am I forgetting?
Yes.
Yeah, Terry Hatcher. Terry Hatcher is often very much regarded as one of the favorites. But no. Erica Durance has been my favorite Lois Lane since she premiered in Smallville. Always had like that right amount of like gusto, investigative, like she needs to get to the bottom of things. She's confident, she can handle herself, but every once in a while finds herself falling off of a building. Awesome Lois Lane. She figures shit out right away. She's really smart. Great, great role. So, and also gorgeous to boot. So when you tell me that this is the movie that she's first in, and which, by the way, I had heard of because she talks about it in a podcast, she's like, oh God, House of the Dead, let's no one find that movie because, yes, I am naked in it. It's like, oh, I have to get around to seeing this movie. And thanks to Mark, I finally got around to seeing this movie.
If there's one silver lining, it's probably that. Now, Joe, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because, unfortunately, the movie doesn't either, which is narration that the movie opens with that goes away for a very long time. It's like a staple of shitty films. We're going to start off with giving you way too much context that we're not going to achieve via dialogue, and we're just going to cram it all in there as fast as we can, as well as introducing you to characters you give negative shits about. There's a cast of like 5 people. We'll tell you their names, but you don't even know this. It's Greg and Simon, Cynthia Karma, who apparently is Foxy Brown, which I'm assuming is either the rapper, not the film, whatever. That's what they say for some reason. And then Alicia, who for some reason loves Simon, or doesn't love Simon. Simon loves her, but yet he's also willing to get with Karma. Don't know any of that, but
I was going to say, of the people about to like venture out on this 3-hour tour, I am pretty sure within the first half hour of the movie, we lose 3 of them pretty darn quick. So we get, again, like I said, way too much backstory for characters that they try to attach us to that don't even last very long. And not even like a, like any sort of survive the night sort of horror movie where obviously a majority of the cast isn't going to make it. But like they at least have some sort of bearing on either the overall story or their loss means something to a character. Nope. None of it. None of that matters.
No.
They're dead, and it didn't even matter they were in the movie in the first place. And I think that is something that I don't think anyone considered while writing the script, if in fact there was any writing to begin with.
They smashed their heads into a typewriter and stuff came out, Joe. There's no way that people actually sat down and wrote this and thought, this is good.
No.
I'm happy with this.
No, and these characters are just as forgettable by their writings as well as their acting. Because, Mark, I couldn't tell you who actually played these people, and I probably looked them up. I've just already forgotten.
Well, Joe, that's the thing. There's not a lot of recognizable people in this film. I mean, it's a shoestring budget. I think it cost something like $10 million to make. I can't remember. I'm not that dedicated.
How did this movie cost $10 million to make? There was one notable actor in this whole movie.
Dude, I have no idea where they spent that money. Ultimately, though, these people are going to a rave in the Pacific Northwest. Otherwise,
as one does. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what you do there.
Yeah.
And they have to hire a boat captain who, when you mentioned 2 recognizable actors, I figured you're talking about the venerable Jürgen Prochnow.
Absolutely.
She's the elder von Wolfhausen, from Beer Fest. One of our... He's been mentioned several times on this program for some reason.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he's the von Wolfhausen. Of course he is.
Yeah.
And like many people, of course he's going to go to the Pacific Northwest for a rave, because what else are you there for? To learn how to climb trees?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right? Which, this was something that did make me laugh a little bit. He's a boat captain. His name is Victor Kirk, Captain Kirk.
Yep.
I mean, okay, fine. We'll let the Germans have that one. The Germans, they can have that one. But his buddy is Clint Howard, who they call Salish, I believe.
Yep,
or Salish.
I forgot about Clint. Mm-hmm.
Clint Howard, I got to say, for all the movies he's been in, okay, this was one of those films where, like, one moment you're like, oh, man, this is why Clint Howard's in this. But then there's another, like, the whole dispute they have over going to the Isla de Muerta, or Muerto, whatever it was.
Which, why there's a Spanish name for this island off the Pacific Northwest, beyond us.
Okay, for one moment, the Spanish did send expeditions that far into the Americas, okay? So that part of it, okay, fine. I'll give you guys that if you want to really go that deep into the history.
Someone's
okay?
holding on to we got this one thing right. Don't you take it from us.
Technically, Joe, that's one thing that I think I even beat them up over the first time I watched this. And I'm like, yeah, okay, fine. But Isla de Morta or whatever, that was something I cracked up about, because there's nothing funnier than listening to Jürgen Prochnow say that term. But Clint Howard, there's a scene in this, okay, like all the nudity happens like in the very beginning. And I think it's when Greg pukes on Cynthia or whatever on the boat. She has to change, of course, which means I have to take off my top and everything along with it to clean myself. And so her character and Clint Howard's Salish are in like the inner part of the boat, and she's got no top on. And I had this is like my Clint Howard MVP moment. If you watch this scene, he never breaks eye contact with her the entire time. Like, you would think he's some creepy, boat dude, but like he's respectfully looking in her eyes. Not a single dart. It's not moving anywhere. He's staring directly into her eyes the entire time. And I'm like, all right, I don't know if that's character development. I don't know if that's professional, just doing his job. But
Maybe both. He'll call him be. I'm still confused over whether or not he actually has both of his hands. Because when you first meet him, he clearly has a hook for a hand. But when you really look at the hook, it's definitely one that you like. It's got like the wooden bar you hold on to, and then the hook coming off of it, and it's very clearly that. But
Yes.
he's kind of. It looks like he's trying to hide that there may or may not be a hand holding on to it.
it felt like they were not committed to having him miss a hand. Mm-hmm. But there are moments later where you see that the hook thing was not real. He has an extra hand. For some reason, the intro of him, the hand isn't there. You just see the hook. And you're like, okay, that's a choice.
All right.
Thank you, Uwe Boll, your artistic integrity. But ultimately, we do end up getting to this island, Joe, which I have to say, when you're watching a bad film, something that happens a lot is when they use the ADR. They just throw dialogue over top of scenes. You don't see anyone speaking. You don't see anyone doing anything. Mm-mm. And they do a shitload of that as you go through like the early scenes of this.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm not saying this was never going to win an award. Don't get me wrong. But I'm watching that and I'm just like, ugh, this is pain.
Oh, that's so much of this movie. It's just all pain. So, but speaking of pain, well, what are we going through this pain for? Why are we going to Isla de Muertes in the first place? And that is, like you said, for a rave. And a rave, like any good rave, totally has a sponsor. In this case, Sega. Sega signs all up in this rave.
Right there.
Except by the time that our band of, I would say, I don't want to say heroes, I don't want to say main characters, by our band of cast makes it to the island, the rave, suddenly not so ravey. A lot of people are gone, missing. Erica Durance, very sadly, by this point, dead.
No, she
Didn't
gone.
make it.
She gone.
Yep.
Yeah, which I was struggling with her scene, by the way, when she was, I mean, I wasn't struggling with her naked. I was struggling, though, with whether or not something is pulling her down. They never really quite show you what that is.
Especially when you get the creature reveal, and they are, in fact, zombies. Like, they never really explain that, like, the zombies are just walking around under the water. We do see them, that they're capable of it, but by all means, that's like when they're already out at mass, not slowly sneaky their way out to get people. So, like, you can't tell, is this thing swimming? Is it walking on the bottom? We don't know. No one thought to really think that through.
It's a question I never thought I'd be asking myself about this movie, but ultimately that's like one small question of which you could probably generate 15 to 20 in just the first 10 minutes of this film. One of them would also be, these people are showing up to a rave that's supposed to have a ton of people, including their friends. They get there and there's torn sheets and tents and everything's in disarray, and they're like, yeah, you know what, this is fine.
Yeah,
let's just hang out here.
Yeah, party on Wayne, party on Garth. I'm sure this will start up again. There is no like, oh God, maybe we shouldn't be here moment. They're like, no. Let's just hang out, have a good time. There's still beer. Clearly there's everything's like, it looks like they should have been raving literally 5 minutes ago and now they're all gone and there's blood everywhere. Yeah, let's just wait and hang around and see what happens. Oh, by the way, let's try and have sex.
One of the greatest lines ever uttered in a film. I know this is absolute shit, but the character of Greg decides to start saying humpity bumpity, which I'm saying it with a straight face, but like on the inside I'm dying a little bit. And it's like, this is no time for sex, Greg. This is not the time.
No. No, this is the time that you immediately just go back and get on the boat. Get on the boat. Like that's what you do in this moment. Like yes. Again, everything here appears to be dead or missing. This isn't like the Scooby-Doo gang moment where like, oh hey, yeah, that those woods are haunted. We don't go in there, and then the white people just dance their way into the woods. This is very clearly a red flag and not a challenge moment. Like they're just literally just missing bodies, but there's every evidence that these people have been killed. Outside of habeas corpus, I suppose. So they apparently need that legality to not want to wait for the rave to kick back up. But any other common sense person would back out of here. But then again, we wouldn't have a movie. And that's when we get introduced to more characters, including the person who's been narrating the movie to this point and has introduced us to our band of idiots that we so callously have been talking about. And we finally get to meet him, who turns out is the main character of the movie, and goes on to kind of be the main character of the movie, and we don't really care about him.
Rudy is supposedly the main character that you've been hearing, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it feels like you needed DLC or like a comic book tie-in to truly recognize anything that was happening here.
God.
Because you recognize his voice when you're introduced to him, and what I found interesting was that Erica Durance's character dies in the quote-unquote House of the Dead that's like out in the forest, right? Mm-hmm. Yet everybody else is hiding out there after the rave gets wiped out.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's like, so what, do they actually live in the house? Is it a rental situation? Because I need to know what the House of the Dead actually is at this point.
Because, it turns out the house itself has actually very little bearing on the movie. They do a point where they try to, again, which, like we have our opening characters get slaughtered inside of the House of the Dead. And then it becomes a haven for literally the rest of the movie. And by literally, they do go in the house, hold out there, and then basically lose the house to the dead where they have to leave and try and get back on the boat. And then, when they can't get on the boat, they go back to the House of the Dead that they had previously lost to the zombies.
And they lose people along the way, and it feels like at no point does anyone care.
No.
I mean, Greg loses his girlfriend Cynthia, literally watches her get blown away by a shotgun right in front of him. Not a tear. There's maybe one stray like, oh, Cynthia, but then it's like Greg's face, stone the entire time.
No, there was more emotion from Ja Rule losing the race in the start of the Fast and the Furious when he realized that he wasn't getting that sweet, sweet booty from Monica. When he saw Paul Walker blow his doors off and he just goes, Monica! That was more acting than we got from this man losing the love of his life.
Oh, I mean, he didn't get his humpity bumpity. No happy ending for Greg. And honestly, from this point on, it feels like there's just like 90s techno, and not good 90s techno.
Nope.
Bad 90s techno.
It is bizarre because Germany is filled with great 90s techno. So what? Like there was no free use, just good techno lying around?
I don't know. I have no idea what was available back then. But I mean, really, this whole sequence that takes almost like a half hour. I would just call it cardio and dumb decisions because the group decides to split up, which it's like, well, why would you guys split up even though one of you is injured? It's like, but you still could stay together, and then you don't have to bring all, like, because they basically find out the boat captain is a smuggler, and he's got just a convenient cache of weapons just ready to go.
As one does. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but for some reason, yeah, we split up because it's a horror movie, so we got to do dumb things.
Got to split up. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Although I will say that, Mark, I think we did share a moment over a character in this movie. And I'm convinced she actually wasn't in the movie. She was just someone who was there on set that they happened to really like and just said, hey, you want to be in the movie? And she was like, sure, I'll go in. What's my character's name? I don't know. But you are wearing a United States flag as basically a bikini. How about we just call you Liberty?
Mm-hmm.
So that way it matches what you're wearing. And, like, this girl just goes in ham. Like, with Uzis and I think maybe a grenade at some point in time. But I just remember, like, she shows up. When she shows up with, I believe it's Rudy at some point in time in this movie, you go a whole, like, maybe 10 minutes and you don't get her name.
No.
She's just there. So you think, all right, well, she has no name. She's clearly going to be dying soon. And then she just evades death, like, twice. And then very suddenly she's about to get hit by a mob of zombies when Rudy, like, yells out her name, Liberty! And then, of course, you're just dying laughing because, you know, she's wearing an America bikini and her name is Liberty.
Is he shouting about the spirit of the United States and the the people? Is he calling someone by their first name? You don't really know. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's so awkwardly shouted out. You just don't know what to do with it.
And then when you throw just like awkward decision making and type of awkward decision making, you get to the point where they are going to hole up in the House of the Dead for the last time of the movie. We should have actually counted how many times they do go back and forth, because I feel like it is actually more than the twice that we discussed. But when they're going back to the final time when they're going to go and take the house and hold up refuge there, our boy Uwe must have just finished watching The Matrix. And I mean just finished watching The Matrix. Yeah. Because every single character that is still alive going into the House of the Dead here gets their own slow-motion 360-degree shot of them taking a shot at the zombies. Every single character gets at least one, some get two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if they're not getting a 360 pan, which I agree, Joe, Uwe Boll must have tripped out of the Matrix behind a camera and just started shooting things, because that's what that whole sequence felt like with this. I felt like it was original rap music that was made for the film. I can't even quote it. I can't even quote it. It was that bad. I can't even quote it. And then during, like, a little bit before this sequence and during it, when characters die, certain ones, we get this weird red screen thing.
Yeah.
That happens for a couple of them, and then it doesn't get used again. And it's like, why did you pick those characters to have a death screen for? Like, what was the point of that?
Yeah, like, again, if you're not going to do it for every character, it's like, oh, because, like, oh, maybe this is how, like, when you die in the video game, you get, a quick little red screen, so it's some sort of, like, homage or hint to that. But, yeah, no, it's just, like, 3 or 4 characters got it, and then we stopped doing it because somewhere along the editing process, someone's like, nah, I don't really like that. And someone's like, well, should we go back and take it out? No, we've gone too far.
Yeah, just leave it in.
Just keep going.
It's like, they won't notice. It's just like the stunt cock and Orgasmo. They don't notice the difference. It's like, you see a problem with this? No.
But that's what you get when you're in a movie where you don't even get the rapper who makes your rap about your movie, and the name of it is clearly in there with they're talking about surviving the House of the Dead. And all you're really hoping for is at some point in time, maybe you have that sweet LL Cool J had as like a shark fin moment, or Big Willie rapping about the Wild Wild West, but it never comes.
No.
It's just it's all bad.
There's no wiki Wild Wild West happening here. And to be honest with you, at this point in the movie, we did have a little crumb of context, okay? The guy that's running the House of the Dead, or whatever you want to say he's doing with it, is apparently this old Spanish priest who is named Castillo Sermano, who's played by David Palfy, Joe, which he was married to Erica Durance until last year.
Good for him. Way to hang in there.
People, like, when you look online, they're all like, is that Arnold Vosloo from The Mummy? It's like, no, he's just a bald, muscular dude in the early 2000s. It's not the same guy, but he he was banished apparently for dark arts and experiments and trying to stay alive, and apparently creates a serum that he knew how to look for with his, very simplistic instruments back then.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I can't quite figure out how he manages to take Greg's face and wear it for a sequence to trick our main characters, and yet still have Greg's eyes on it. And then he takes it off, and it's his eyes.
Yeah.
And Greg's body is literally sitting over there, eyes in skull.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what happened just now?
What I don't understand is how any character fell for this when they very clearly saw Greg die. There is no, and at this point in time, we are well into the movie where if someone gets bit by a zombie, they're turning into the zombie. There is no, oh, maybe we can save him. He's still him. He's still Greg. He's still my friend somewhere in there. No, that time has passed because I get that is a trope for zombie movies, that there's always going to be a character who thinks they can save another character who's been bit. But that trope usually either ends early in the movie where you very quickly have that person turn, or at least someone is into their madness. Where you think of was it Night of the Living Dead, the remake in the early 2000s? You very clearly have Dawn of the Dead. There we go. Not Night of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead, where you have the married couple and the baby comes out very clearly a zombie, but dad's like, nope, this is my kid. You're not killing it. You're not touching it. He's aware that he's crazy. He's aware that this is the wrong thing, but he's kind of going for it. These are just idiots. They saw Greg die. They know Greg's not coming back. The first thing they should when they see Greg walking is don't trust that shit. We're shooting him. Yeah.
At least it led to some of the dumbest dialogue I've ever heard, which is, why did you want to be immortal? And then he's like, to live forever. And it's like, you know what? I wish I had thought of that. Really.
Oh, my God.
That's some powerful stuff right there.
It's
like,
my God.
Was that rhetorical? I don't know what they were going for there.
That's I think it's you ask a toddler why they took a cookie out of the cookie jar and you told them they couldn't. And they're like, well, because I was hungry. Yeah. And it's a cookie. That was it. There was no deep-seated death took from me that which I cared for the most and she'll never do it again. Even some sort of line that would make sense, not just so I can live forever. At least they could have added a duh after that. Don't insult the intelligence of your audience. Just let us know that the person who asked it's an idiot in the movie.
But Sermano has to be an idiot because he kills all of these people and yet only wants to save the very last two survivors to apparently replace his skin and parts of his flesh. And it's like, but you just had 40 people on this island.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not be selfish, okay, Mr. Dark Spanish Priest. Let's take a few, all right, and then let the story kind of fill in the rest of that space. You don't need to kill 50, people just to do that.
I don't know.
Come on.
Mark, I don't know. 2003, maybe in that economy with people, you just needed to save everything. But he doesn't even do that very well.
I guess.
No.
Ultimately, Joe, we're not going to ruin the ending of this movie, even though we rightfully should, because the whole rest of the movie's ruined just to watch it in the first place. But one thing we will leave you with is that the main character of Rudy, once again, we use that as a very loose term. Rudy, at the very end of everything, does disclose his last name of Curian, which for those who did play the game and had made it that far, surprisingly, you held on that entire movie. You actually find out that his dad, or someone before him, was the main antagonist and the doctor from the original games. So it's like, okay, I do remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Still don't care.
Nope.
But
it's because you wasted the whole movie developing a character that we didn't care about. If you would have, you could have just gave us that right away. But hey, that name sounds familiar. Is he going to be the guy who's the doctor in the next movie? But no, you could have had that mystery there by giving us his name and see, is he the guy in the video game? Oh no, his dad's the guy in the video game. You're setting up the actual video game. This is again, you could have done something that would have made sense. But by this time, again, if you've made it this far, you just don't care.
There is one other thing to look out for, though. Okay, now I spent a lot of time playing House of the Dead in the arcade because, well, we had allowance money, and that's something we got to do. Now, if this was made by any capable filmmaker beyond Uwe Boll, they probably could have made this a lot more interesting, but at the very end, Rudy does get saved by the eventual main characters of the game. So when they come down in that little chopper and, they're literally saying Homo sapiens as if it's a scientific term that we need to describe humans with. Those guys are the main characters. So Uwe Boll may have said it's a prequel to try and sound cool. Some parts of it, though, he is accurate with that. So at least we can give him that.
Yep, for Uwe getting two things right in that movie, and Erica Durance winning us over for the first time before she becomes Lois Lane, it is on that bombshell that we would like to thank you for listening to the Digital Dissection podcast. And as always, we appreciate all the Dissection crew does for us week after week. Your support really does go a long way, and if you like this episode, and not so much the movie we talked about, check us out on YouTube where we make weekly videos about our favorite things.
And we also do love hearing from you, so feel free to message us over at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com or in our communities across social media. We love your ideas, suggestions, and, well, any feedback you might have for movies you actually do want to watch. And until next time, pop culture nerds, keep on dissecting.